Can you pet sit full time? I know when I was just getting started as a pet sitter, this was by far the biggest question I had. I had seen a lot of videos where people were like, I made $10,000 a month on Rover, or I make 6 figures a year walking dogs. And I really always wondered, is that true? Is that realistic? Is it possible? Well, today I'm going to answer that question in this video with my very honest, unedited thoughts. Okay, to start, just a little bit of background. My name is Shannon. I'm the Meow Me to the beautiful Miss Katniss Siamese. Her name is Katniss, but her Instagram is Miss Katniss Siamese if you want to follow along. And I have been pet sitting in some way, shape, or form for about 10 years, but we are really talking about the past 2 years where it has picked up and become a much bigger thing. This directly coincides with when I joined the site Meowtel, which is a cat sitting app. So I'm actually very specifically talking about cat sitting and my experiences, although I do have some experiences with dogs as well. And it's really the past 2 years have given me a tremendous insight into pet sitting as a job, what it entails, what it pays, what the demand is, and what I honestly really truly believe could or couldn't be possible as a full-time job. So before I answer the question, I just want to put the caveat out there that these are just my thoughts based on my experiences, and I am in no way, shape, or form stating that it is always true for every single person in every situation. Just because I think it doesn't mean there aren't people who are exceptions to the rule. So I'm just going to talk about what I generally believe to be true based on what I've seen. Okay, let's just start off by answering the question. Can you pet sit full-time? Is it realistic? My unedited answer to that is possibly, but I think it would be incredibly difficult in some circumstances. So I'm going to explain this all in detail. So for starters, if it is just you are supporting yourself, you're not married, you live alone, and this is all you're doing, that's where I think this could be incredibly difficult. There are just so many things that you need to keep in mind. First of all, I will say this, the hourly rates or the rates that I have set for my jobs, which I actually don't have trouble getting, are good. So for a 20-minute visit, I have a $30 rate set. For a 45-minute visit, I have a $45 rate set. And for a 60-minute visit, I have a $60 rate set. That's good money. But the reality is that you're not going to have, 8 hours a day worth of visits every day. In fact, the work is incredibly inconsistent. There are times of year when people need pet sitters, usually they're holidays and weekends. And then there are times of year where it really, really dries up. Even during the busy times, there's a lot of things that may prevent you from taking tons of jobs. For example, clients may need overlapping times, so they both need you to feed their pet or visit their pet at a specific time. Obviously, you're not going to be able to take both of those jobs. Then you have to factor in the drive time in between jobs. And something that I've really learned in the past year is it takes a decent amount of time to just simply type up a summary and send the photos and video clips and communicate with the client. So yes, the rates are good. And in fact, they could be really good if you just calculated that out if it was an actual salary. So there's a formula somebody told me a long time ago that if you take an hourly rate, so let's just take $60 an hour, and if you double that, so 120, that's essentially the equivalent of a $120,000 annual salary. But again, to get that, you really have to be working 8 hours a day, $60 an hour, and that doesn't allow time for all those other things you have to factor in. Secondly, it's really important to keep in mind that the sites, so specifically Meowtel, Rover, if you're using a site like that, those sites take fees, and they take fees out of your earnings. And so on Meowtel, they have a scaled system where new clients, people that you have not worked for before, they're taking 30% of your earnings and keeping it for themselves. And I talked about this in my initial video about signing up on Meowtel and what that experience was like. If you want to check that out, it has a lot more information. The fee is high, there's no doubt about it. There is value provided. For example, they are giving you the platform that helps you find the customers, so there's marketing. They do some type of training. They do provide a little bit of insurance. So there are benefits you get from it. And frankly, if you weren't using the app, you would have to be doing all of those things by yourself. There is a time and a cost to that. But the point being that that hourly rate is before taxes and before those fees are taken out. And so it really does not end up being what it sounds like it is. So another thing is if you are doing it full-time as an individual, you're going to have to pay for your own health insurance. So you're essentially a contractor and you're going to have to go buy your own health insurance, extremely expensive. You have to factor in the wear and tear on your vehicle, which is not insignificant, and the gas costs. going to and from jobs, and keep in mind that for every job you should, on the apps you have to, if you're running a business, you absolutely should do a free meet and greet where you go to the client's home, meet them, introduce yourself, meet their pets, and kind of get situated for the job. About half the time in my experience, you also have to return the key or the garage door opener when they return. So these are little trips that aren't really necessarily factored into the hourly rate too. Another expense that you might have if you are not going through an app is paying for your own insurance. As a pet sitter, you should definitely be insured to protect you in the case of accident, illness, etc. It is covered somewhat through the apps. That's a whole other topic. I've learned a lot more about that. But suffice to say, if you're taking a job through Meowtel and you adhere to Meowtel policies, and that's the big caveat, and there's a bunch more to that, then the job is covered through their insurance to a degree, so that does provide you some protection. If you're doing this on your own, that's a cost you're going to have to incur. Bottom line, guys, is if you are doing it full-time as an individual, and this is your only source of income, these are things you really need to think about, and that does contribute to making it a lot harder, in my opinion, to thrive as a full-time pet sitter. I did just a really brief Google search to find out what like the average salaries are. Now, I live in Colorado, and that's a very, especially lately, like a really high cost of living area. And it was saying that pet sitter salaries here are generally speaking higher than around the nation. And I can tell you for sure, I'm pretty sure the demand here is higher. People here are pet obsessed, pet friendly. They'll do anything for their pets, so you don't really hurt for work here. But even so, they were estimating that the average annual salary really was kind of in the $35,000 to $45,000 range. And again, that is without benefits. So, circle back to my original answer. Is it possible? Could you get by on that if you absolutely had to? I think you could. Would it be thriving, comfortable, whatever? I think in order to make that, number one, you're going to be extremely busy. And number two, that would be difficult. That would be actually really difficult. Although, of course, another caveat to throw in here is it kind of depends on what your expenses are too. Because if you are somebody who is blessed to not have to pay rent, you don't have debts like car payments or student loans or whatever, and your expenses are minimal, obviously that's going to be a lot more doable than if you have more typical expenses. So that's just something else you need to factor into the equation. Now, I do think there are a couple of situations where it is much more feasible to think of this as a full-time job. One would be if you are married and you have two incomes and you're literally just looking at it less about what is the total amount of money it brings to me and more, is this fulfilling enough and would I have enough to do where I could essentially fill up a full-time calendar? Especially if you're somebody who doesn't need like the structure of like 9 to 5 Monday through Friday and you're good with flexible, more go with the flow, with peaks and valleys in terms of busyness. I certainly think that it is absolutely a possible and feasible, essentially full-time income, but I'm assuming that there's a spouse also making another income. So that completely, in my opinion, changes the equation, especially because they probably have some type of insurance or benefits that you may be able, like health insurance through their employer, that you may be able to take advantage of. But the other one, and definitely not to be underrated, is if you were to combine pet sitting with another pet-related type business or venture. So for example, maybe you do boarding at your home. This is not allowed through Meowtel. You are not allowed to bring client kitties into your house, but you could have your own boarding business on the side. Or you could run a pet-related like line of merch, for example, and be selling that, and then also utilize pet sitting to kind of complement it. Or another option is to run your own pet sitting business. So you're the owner, you employ multiple people underneath you. That I think would absolutely be feasible. And honestly, I'm kind of convinced that in order to make the six-figure, the big bucks, that's really the direction you would have to go, is to combine it with something and or run your own business. So all that being said, what do I think pet sitting is best for? You know, everybody's different, but in my personal opinion, this is the coolest. I mean, honestly, it is super enjoyable. Like part-time, side hustle, gig that allows you to make extra money. And the extra money is good. Like I'm not knocking this at all. I'm just trying to be realistic about there's a huge difference between a side hustle money and like full-time, like I could sustain myself and thrive money. I think generally speaking, this is much better suited toward a side hustle part-time gig. Certainly possible to be full-time, but really it has been just such an amazing experience for me as a complement to the other things that I do. It has taken me quite a bit of time to kind of figure out how I want this to fit into my life. And I've toyed with all kinds of options. Generally speaking, in the 2 years since I've joined Meowtel, my business has picked up and exploded. And I am working almost exclusively on referral now just because there's so many clients I've started out with that continue to request me. And as a cat owner, I totally get that, because if I find somebody that's amazing with catness and I feel comfortable with that person, you best believe I'm going back to them time and time again as long as they're available. So it's a blessing, and it's wonderful because I don't really have to go out and try to market myself much. I've actually had to turn down a decent amount of business just to prevent myself from feeling overwhelmed. One thing that's kind of hit me a little bit hard lately is a little bit of burnout, and it really just is because it's so hard to predict the future, so I keep my calendar open into the future. Things get booked inevitably because people need or want pet sitters, makes total sense. But then last minute, like a family thing will come up and I suddenly won't have the flexibility or availability to participate. And that's been a little tough. It's been tough to learn how to juggle accommodating requests and desires with also still allowing that flexibility, which I truly value, into my life. So these are just things that I'm figuring out for myself. The right answer for me may not be the right answer for everybody. I personally am kind of getting to the point where I think 2 cat sitting jobs a day might be my max that I want to tackle most days. And I'm getting better at kind of identifying into the future, like here's some time that I just want to block off so I know there's a possibility of a trip or something that I need to do. But these are things that's taken me time to wade through. So as you pet sit, if this is indeed something you're interested in doing, these are questions you're going to have to answer for yourself. I hope the insights that I shared with you in this video are helpful and just give you some things to think about. I'm just going to leave with the note that, again, I want to just state how incredibly happy I am that I have this option. I feel very blessed. I love my clients. Some of these cats, I get excited when I learn that I get to go back and see them again. They've become like friends, and Katniss is getting better about the scent that I come home with, and I'm getting better about making sure to change clothes quickly, hop in the shower as not to make her feel threatened or intimidated. But it's generally super cool. I'm here to answer any questions. If you have any about pet sitting, leave them below. If you want more information about Meowtel the app, you can check out the video I made about my experiences signing up and the initial impressions, etc. I will probably do an updated version shortly because I have now 2 years under my belt and a lot of things have happened that I've learned from. And that's not to sound bad. It's not bad. It's just there's a lot more insights than I can add at this point. So that is it for today, guys. I hope everybody is doing well, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.